There are some sounds that instantly throw you back to a time and place. Like this one. The opening sequence to Hard Grit is iconic. The heartbeat, the distorted images, the guitar chords. And the scream. There was something surprising I didn't know about this. Something that the film's cult star Seb Grieve told me.
Had Jean-Minh just shown up that day at your door and said, "Oh, do you want to go climbing?" Or
yes.
That's brilliant.
It's a bit like the stars came into line, isn't it, really? It's a cold day, Jean-Minh turned up, and Rich said, let's go and film it. So, but he was really nice. He knew I was going out then, because, okay, you're going out, we better film it. We'll just be quiet.
Excellent. Little did Jean-Minh know.
But perhaps I shouldn't really be surprised by this. It's totally in keeping with the zeitgeist that Hard Grit captures. That weird mix of eccentricity, motivation, planning. You're listening to Factor 2 from UK Climbing. So let's backtrack a bit. Hard Grit came out in 1998. Directed by Rich Heap, produced by Mark Turnbull, and it gave us an insight into the top dogs and the likely lads of the gritstone scene. Many of the routes in the film were the hardest gritstone lines around, and since their first ascents, they'd lain dormant. Their reputations were building. Hard Grit became a film about busting one myth while creating a new mythology of its own. It brought head-pointing into the mainstream. Earlier this year I went for a beer with Niall Grimes, who wrote the history section for the film.
Before he knew it, I was doing E8s. I did E8s just in time, because a little bit later it became really uncool to do E8s, because it was just like a bunch of people like me who shouldn't be doing E8s were doing all the E8s, and kind of eventually that wore away the magic of them all. Was it 1990s Hard Grit, 1996 or 97 or something? Yeah. You'd see lots of photographs in magazines of grit, but there was no, I could be contradicted, no real photograph of anything, of anyone on anything harder than E6 on grit. Every photograph you saw was a rope around the corner type thing of Neil Gresham and the end of the fair type of thing, but there's a Ray Wood had got the rope around behind the ret, and that's all the photographs that you saw in magazines of that ilk were all staged shots. There's no genuine shots. And not a camera. And that's what one of the things made Hard Grit amazing, because suddenly went from having no photographs of a real E7 lead to having actual footage of E7 leads, because footage was kind of rare back then, wasn't it? And so I brought my camera and I photographed Seb doing Parthian shot. And I got really excited about this on the lead. And there was time of slides, and I brought the slides back for processing and I held them all up, and the colours were beautiful, the exposures were amazing. When I looked, I'd focused on the background of Burbage Valley. So all the actual photographs of Seb, he's out of focus in them all, apart from a couple of them falling off on an earlier ascent. So that's one of the things that made Hard Grit really interesting. This leap from no photographs of an E8 to footage of an E8.
I think he started out helping Johnny out in an editing suite, and it was just typical Johnniness. And then Johnny headed off and left the camera with him, and he just started taking it out and filming us. To actually have somebody videoing these ascents was crazy. And video cameras are great because they're silent. You don't have the sound of the shutter, so that helps. And he was great because he was a very talented climber as well, and he wasn't like a photographer or anything like that. So he was just one of your mates coming out with a camera, and you couldn't really tell he was there. And he was very good about it. He didn't want to push you. He was very aware of that.
I think one of the things that made Hard Grit so successful was that Rich Heap was very much part of the scene that he was trying to capture. Here he is.
I was a full-time climber for 2 to 3 years, stints out in America, Australia. But as it was kind of coming to the end of that, I was like, I just can't spend all my days climbing. So I started doing a video production course 1 day a week, and also doing a photography A-level. So I'd helped. I ended out. Johnny Dawes approached me to help finish the editing of Best Forgotten Art, and then he went off to America and left me with his camera. And he said he was probably going for about 2 weeks, and it turned out to be like about 6 months. And over that time, I accrued all the hard grit. I think the first thing we filmed, or I filmed, was going out with Bentley to do Renegade Master. And it was like, either I take the camera and film it, or I stand underneath him waiting for him to fall on top of me. It seemed like a really good bet to go and film it. And, that was, again, a good laugh, because, there was a load of spotters like Andy Harris. I think Robin Barker was there and stuff. And it was just like, we took out thermarests. That was it. It was before bouldering mats, really. So yeah, we had thermarests to catch him on. Yeah, so that was the first thing. I can't remember what order stuff was filmed in. I think what Richard Eckhead came. So I mean, Seb, because he'd been travelling a bit, he'd been to Australia and stuff. It was starting to be like a focal point for people that were passing through Sheffield, like Dave Jones, who I'd met when I was out in Australia, and. He was really prolific when he came over that winter. He was just wanting to do everything. So, he went on loads and loads of things just to try. Like he went on Born Slippy, or whatever it is, Knocking on Heaven's Door, Braille Trail. We were both messing around on Meshuga at the same time as Seb. So yeah, he was being really prolific. Then, Richard Eckhead had obviously been sold the myth of hard grit by... of Gritstone by Seb. So when he came over and stayed, he wanted to do Master's Edge. So yeah, I just kind of like tagged along on a lot of those, trips out. And I wasn't like a limpet though, because because I was instrumental in like going out on Meshuga with Seb. It was like me and him trying to figure out how to do it, because we were just climbing together. But I was never. I never had the capacity to keep it together on a hard grit route. I mean, I did a few E7s, but like that step up to I'm going to deck it, I could never keep it together. Because we were there at the crag when all this stuff was going on, you just knew it was going to be amazing. Before I arrived in Sheffield and before I was living with Seb, you'd heard about all the mythology of, Gritstone ascents. You'd heard all the debate around the first ascent of Parthian shot and stuff. And then you're there when the second ascent's going on, and you just knew like you were in a special place. You could feel it, like all the belayers and stuff. I mean, Seb, he tried to keep it all nice and calm and friendly, and mates were going along. It was like a day out at the crag, and like as a person that was there documenting it, I was I lived with Seb and I was a good mate of Seb's, so that's why I had access to it. But I was very aware that to maintain that mates at the crag feel and not to be intrusive or anything, and like stuff. If you listen to how the questions are delivered to him, they're kind of a bit left fieldy. How did you sleep last night type things. They're just very gentle and they're not over probing. And yeah, so you knew that to be there, you kind of been welcomed into the inner circle, so to speak, to see this stuff. And you knew that nobody ever usually went to these. It was usually the climber and the belayer. There was no documenting of it before. Even if you look for photos, I think I think Seb had a photo of him doing Gaia, and it was taken by someone passing with a dog, who just snapped it off and gave him his address and said, I'll post that off to you.
While hard grit captured lots of difficult ascents from a range of climbers, the one that really sticks in my mind is Seb Grieve. And he really embodies the kind of central theme of the film. And there's that question. Is Seb mad? Because that's how he seems.
For example, whenever Seb was doing Parthian shot, and I was someone who'd phone up looking for a belayer, that sort of character, like a sort of, oh, try that person, they might come out. And I think at this time I was going out with his sister, whether that was before Hard Grit or after. Maybe it was before Hard Grit, so I was going out with Seb's sister. So I knew him that way and would go parties in his house. And Seb was good fun to be around. But there's this sort of whole thing where he wanted belayers to go out to Parthian shot and nobody ever wanted to go. So he did well to find anyone ever. So through that, I became familiar. I can't tell you how I know Rich, how I know Seb, how I got involved in it. But it's a mixture of all those things, like just being around. And because, you look back and you think things are things, but things are only things and you look back on things. And at the time, they're just very random events stacked up in some sequence that when you try and assemble them in the future, you can't remember what the sequence was because at the time, their relevance was minimal of each of these events. Parthian shot was an A-list climb. And Seb wasn't an A-list climber. Seb was a sort of like a have-a-go hero, and he'd got up some things on grit like Gaia, and he didn't deserve to get up Gaia. This sounds really unfair, and I don't mean it to be unfair, but I'm trying to put across why Seb trying Parthian shot just seemed like a madness act. But he kept at it, and everyone really loved the fact that he was trying it, but they didn't. It was like, some guy in the local gym keeps arranging a fight with Mike Tyson. He keeps phoning Mike Tyson's agent to see, could we have a fight? It was a bit like that. I don't know. I don't mean Mike Tyson today, but I mean Mike Tyson from the 90s. My name's Bob and I'd really love to fight Mike. Any chance I could fight Mike? No. Don't phone back here again. I was Seb looking for belayers for Parthian shot.
Well, like with Meshuga, I'd been out when he'd been top roping it. So I think he'd top roped it 3 times in a day before he went. I mean, on the day, he was still holding it in. So the go before, he actually fell off on top rope before he actually went for the head point. So yeah, it was completely nerve wracking. I think you can't just completely leave it behind that. There are consequences, and you're sort of outside of their head.
Ali! Oh, come on.
So you can, you're kind of living it how you'd live it yourself on the rock. So, because I was always really nervous as a climber way, way above gear. I was just like that and especially like stuff like when he was rocking over on Parthian shot, it was utterly, heart in mouth.
I always remember the first day I looked down the route, and I looked at it from the top. You look down knowing that there's a very steep face underneath. And you're like, and there's this slab, and you're like, so you're going from a steep face to a slab. You've got to rock over. That's incredible. So I always have that in the back of my mind when I was trying. It's like, oh, if I can ever do that, I'd be made up.
First time up, it was like, oh my God, everybody's mindset was that Seb must not fall off. He must not fall onto that shipwreck of a flake.
Well, that was the bit about Seb doing Parthian shot. I was just walking in the street and he met me. He just came in and just asked me to freestyle into the mic. Basically, that's all that was. There's no script to that. It was just like, there wasn't even any footage. He just sort of told me to ramble on for a bit. So I just got a mic and just sat down and rambled on. There was 2 days I was involved in belaying him on the actual ascent. And the first day, I think I felt really stressed because everyone was coming along. There's loads of people there, and he was the main event. And it was kind of probably a lot of pressure on him on top of doing some really stressful climb. But the day that he did it, we'd already been to Millstone and Richard had done Master's Edge. So it was more part of a climbing day out rather than a sort of spectacle day out. And I think that's one of the things that contributed to making it okay for him on that day and making him more relaxed.
Like all the way through Hard Grit, you're kind of this slightly mad character. But actually, yeah, you are really calculated. You're the only one who's looked really closely at the flake on Parthian shot, I guess, and judged that it's probably all right.
Yeah. So that was crazy. The Parthian shot thing was the epitome of like, you had to go against the flow, really. Like everybody was like, it's death. The flake's going to snap. Blah 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 blah. There's loads of that, and I was like, okay. So the flake's going to snap. Let's see how much gear we can get in it. It's really complicated to do. I had about 11 bits of gear in it, and I couldn't place them on the lead. I wasn't strong enough, so I didn't. It subsequently had ascents where the gear was placed on the lead by my friends and mates who used all my gear, beta. So I literally had a load of gear, and I basically went on the assumption like, okay, if the top breaks, can I have some gear in the middle? And if the middle comes out, is the gear. So there's 3 bits of gear. So I just like worked it out like that. Okay, that's probably going to be all right. There's a lot of gear in. There's 3 sections of gear in 3 different bits of the plate. As it happens, the bit that I've forgotten the guy who broke was the top, which took all the brunt of the falls. But if I presume if we'd had the full set of gear in there, something would have held, because it all held body weight. Everything held body weight.
No, I'm out of it. Fuck.
But going against that flow of everybody going like, yeah, it's all going to rip. Just going to rip. The flake's no good. You had to be quite strong-minded to go against that, and those are all your peers saying that. So
I'll tell you one thing about hard grit. In that freestyle thing I did about the shipwreck of the flake. A couple of years previous to that, I'd been in the Donegal climbing with a bunch of Irish friends. One of them, Brian Callan. And Brian went up to do this route that I'd just led, or maybe he's second to me. And there's a flake in the roof. And as he got to the top, he said that it sounded like a shipwreck because it creaked a lot. And we all laughed. And a couple of years later, I'm recording Hard Grit, and I'm just sort of sat in Rich's thing, and I made this phrase, a shipwreck of a flake. And it was sampling this joke Brian had made some years earlier. And when Brian saw Hard Grit, he said, that was my line. And it was his line. So it's funny that we both remembered the fact that the shipwreck thing was his line, that I just said it on camera, then it becomes my line. But it's actually Brian's line all along. And not every time we see each other, but it does come up every now and again, the fact that I'd nicked his gag, the shipwreck gag.
Yeah, and that's the big one.
I know. Yeah. He never got a penny.
No.
I'm rich. So it's funny, just those little sort of the way things get passed around, isn't it? And
yeah.
Because it's just a word, but it sort of becomes more than a word through repetition, or because hard grit has gone into the brainstem, hasn't it? The climbing brainstem.
I wonder if that central myth starts to unravel here. Seb the Madman. While capturing these ascents live has a sort of artistic purity, what Mark and Rich were really capturing was the result of careful engineering. Seb wasn't really mad at all.
I've done a lot of grit routes. Started a long time before hard grit was made. I was kind of doing gritstone. I'll have to look it up in the diary. First sort of what I would call hard grit was sort of a repeat of a route in Dube's Quarry, Dharma, which is a beautiful wall, and I just cleaned it again because it's filthy, and then top roped it, and then eventually got my mate Stu to call in on the way home from Raventor because everybody was sport climbing, and do it, and then I went on and did other stuff like Braille Trail. Braille Trail was great because at that time all of these routes had this reputation that was, in my opinion, way bigger than them. They weren't actually that hard. They had this reputation that they were just death. Nobody ever repeated them. Only Johnny Dawes can do them. Massive, and then that put the fear of God in everybody. Nobody go near them. And what you actually found is when you looked at them, they're actually, it's not that bad actually. Yeah, I might be able to do this. Braille Trail was great because you had to go and buy your own pegs. Went and bought some pegs, and they were soft steel. You sat on the peg, and it just came out the hole. It extruded out. I was like, right, need better pegs than that. Better go and get some hardened steel, proper black diamond. lost arrows, so we went and bought those. And then they don't fit. I've got to cut them up. So I had a hacksaw, and they're going to slide out. I'll put some cardboard on them. So there was all this making your own gear thing for Braille Trail, which was really good fun. And then there's this nail that came out as well. I was like, a 6-inch nail with a big fat head on it, tied off with a bit of thin tape. That was used. So I made all my own gear and pushed it in. And that's what Johnny said in his description. I remember it being in the Stony New Route book. And it was great to try that and do it. So that was good fun. And then I think the next thing I did after that was Gaia. And Gaia was around the time that film Stone Monkey came out. And I tried it for a long time. And then I couldn't get anybody to hold my rope. So I was going to solo it one day. Glad I didn't. That would have been scary. But also, I'm also glad I didn't, because I don't think anybody would have believed me. And that was interesting to do that route, because my friend Phil, who held my ropes, he got his wife to take pictures all the way up. And they're not particularly good slides, but I remember looking at them on the slide projector, and we're going, oh, yeah. You're going to deck out from there. You're going to definitely deck out from there. Oh, you're going to deck out from there. And those were like all the way up, virtually from halfway up the groove. So the opening sequence on Hard Grit is Jean-Minh Trin-Thieu trying Gaia. Now, Jean-Minh Trin-Thieu was a good climber. He could climb HC, and Gaia's 7B+, the top rope. Jean-Minh had a habit of turning up on my doorstep and say, hey, hello, how are you, Seb? And then his next question would be, are you going climbing today? I'm like, yes. Can I come? Yes. What are we doing? We went out and did all sorts of things. But then that day he came out and did try Gaia. That was kind of interesting that day. I must have climbed Meshuga before he fell off that, because we had to go to the hospital after that. And I'm holding his rope. And he literally starts to scrabble, and I'm like, I'm not running yet. Until I could see air between all of his limbs. I was like, he could still hold on. And then he was in mid-flight, and I'm thinking, well, he's going to deck out, because he's fallen off from that place we all said everybody would deck out from. But I ran anyway, and he somehow stayed off the deck, which was kind of incredible. And that's the opening sequence to Hard Grit. And, he got away really lightly, just cut his leg badly, and that was just sewn up with a few stitches in Chesterfield Hospital.
When Dave Jones was around, it was usually me and Dave going climbing together. So like when he was doing Braille Trail, I just needed someone to hold a camera, because it was just me and Dave. If you watch the film, it's me belaying, and so he came along. I'm trying to think how I met him or had come across him, but he was out of the film school. And he was part of the climbing scene, not really my scene, but he was living in Nether Edge or Sharrow. So yeah, I asked him to come along, and then there was something else, and then actually it just felt better to have a couple of you doing it. I think it's easier to push yourself when there's a couple of you making a film. I've always found that right from then right through till now. I kind of always feel that if there's two of you doing it, one, it's more fun, and two, usually there's a lot of insecurity about it, and there's actually a lot more work than you ever contemplate. So yeah, that's why Mark came on board. So I think what he brought to it, I think he brought a little bit more professionalism, probably. It gave me a bit more drive, because you had someone there to encourage you. And yeah, when it came to the editing, he was a good editor, and we pretty much tagged. We were like a tag team. We didn't have very long. It was in the days where we had to hire an edit suite, so we literally worked day and night. So Mark would do the day shift, and then I would take over at 9 o'clock at night and carry on through till about 5 in the morning, and then he would start again at 9 or 10 in the morning. And we would look through each other's stuff and edit it and rework it. And also, like, sometimes when you've worked on something for ages, you just hate it and you're really bored of it. And to have someone come in and go, wow, that's great, it's so exciting. So yeah, I think that was a good thing. And really, he was really good at, we both came good at really just, condensing the stuff down to like 3-minute bite-sized pieces. I think we edited for 9 days, I think. So, I mean, they were pretty much, 18, 19-hour days. Then we had a break for probably about 3 months where we started to fill in little gaps and stuff where we felt like it would be better. I think we did all the intro stuff then. I think we might have gone out and got John done in that period. And then, we went back and probably edited about another 5 days. So, really quick. I've been on BBC documentaries, which have felt really quick, and those have been 5-week edits.
Come on.
Yeah, I used to spend every year. I used to go and look for new routes. Still look for new routes, by the way. I really like looking for new routes. But I have a list. I'd have a list like, okay, it's 10 lines. I'm going to go and try on the grid, and I just work my way through them. And then by the time you got to number 3, you'd already found something really good to climb. You usually wouldn't get to the end of the list. So with Meshuga, years ago, I'd gone out to try that. That was called the Promontory Traverser Rat. Really well known, last standing problem on the grit. And years ago, and I can't remember the dates, I'd gone out to try it. And I got there and there was a bunch of people abseiling down it. I was like, shucks, I'll go and try that other thing around the corner. What's it called? Gaia. I'll go and try that instead. And that's when I started trying Gaia. Anyway, I did Gaia, and then I went back and tried it over the years, and it was always climbed on the left-hand side. They reckoned it was probably about French 8B. It was absolutely nails. Couldn't touch it. And you go back every year, I'll try that arete again, I'll go and try that arete again. And then eventually one year I try it, and then my friend comes out, and he's Quentin Fisher. I know him really well. I used to work with him in Leeds University, and we used to have a laugh together. And he'd always turn up with his dog. His dog had come first. And then he just turns up this day, and he says, like, yeah, what are you trying? I'm trying this. I said, oh, yeah. Why don't you try the right-hand side? And it was his idea, like, try, what about this? And he loved jumping between holds, so it was kind of like a typical Quentin thing. Miss out all the holds, jump to the top. He was a big guy like me. We just started trying it like that, and then it suddenly started to fall into place. It was like, holy moly, this is a thing. I could do this. And then I just tried it over a few more days and eventually got it in a oneer. I used to start talking on routes because I found people encouraging me was distracting me. And that actually started on Grail Trail. And I didn't say, I found people encouraging me to really put my concentration off, and then I fell off. So then one of the ways to psych myself up was to talk.
Cheeky little thing. I know what you are thinking. I will have you yet.
I then had the added benefit that everybody else was... I couldn't hear anybody else anyway because I was talking, and they all shut up because they thought I was about to come off. So it's really great. Just like it was just my internal psych, it wasn't anything more than that. So yeah, and that I guess that spooked a lot of people. Going back to your point about the conditions, I kind of knew that it was quite warm back then. I knew that if it got colder, it would get easier, because of the nature of the grit. And the day we did it, it was like really cold. It was like, this is like sticky. So you're on that day because you got that extra factor of stickiness that you forget every year how much better it's going to go, but it just goes really sticky on a cold day. And I've been trying it quite a bit on warmer days and still being able to top rope it. And then when it got to that cold day, and then I had Jean-Minh had turned up. And they got a film crew there, and there was a few other people to spot. Basically, I had enough spotters, and it was cold. I was like, I think I need to do it today.
In the fucking hole, you tosser.
Horrible feeling once I know you're going up that thing. That's why you stop doing it, because you don't feel very happy before you do it. You know what I mean?
Hey, it's all in the mind.
And I'd say, that like the turning point in the whole film was when we went out and filmed Meshuga, and it was the same day that Jean-Minh fell off of Gaia, and it was probably I don't know, maybe like 3 months into the process, because I think it was just after Christmas time. And as we walked away from the crag, you were kind of shell-shocked because Jean-Minh was like off to hospital to have his shin looked at. But also, yeah, you just were like thinking, oh my God, that was just astonishing to witness and be around. And you just realised that, we'd filmed it and they had it in a can and it was just going to be mega. And actually, that was when we started trying a lot harder with the film. Like, started to think, oh my God, we need to make something that's going to do this stuff justice. It can't just be throwaway. So then it just infiltrated everything, like getting a better soundtrack and making sure that we got all the big stars, like tracking Jerry down to do Samson and tracking John Dunn down. So yeah, that was when we knew that it was going to be good.
Suddenly, you got all these little clips of people doing first ascents, and he made this trailer. And it was like, oh, I've got something here. I can make a film. And it kind of went from there. And then it took another, I don't know how long it took him, another year to film all the other material. Lots of stuff happened in that year, which was great.
We had like a really big unveiling in Outside where we knew Dickie Turnbull. We said, hey, we got this trailer. Can we come and put it on your telly? And yeah, it just went on for the whole day. And then we took it away. So that there was like, there'd been a buzz created about it, and then that was it. It was gone. Before we started editing Hard Grit, we went and had 2 days of lessons with this guy. We were actually taught to edit by Dawn Shadforth, who went on to direct Kylie Minogue's I Can't Get You Out of My Head. My little claim to fame. Did her video. And Mantronic, she's done loads of stuff. But yeah, she was just kicking around Sheffield, trying to make it as a music film director. There's little bits when you've watched it, when you're editing, that you really fall in love with. And yeah, the nod that Leo does at the top of End of the Affair, where he kind of nods to himself like, yeah, done it. He's like his own little private moment. Yeah, I love that.
I feel it was lucky for me to be in that film. It just happened that Rich was there. It just happened that he decided to make a film, and we just happened to be climbing those routes at that time. And because it almost made Gritstone popular again. Well, it did make Hard Gritstone popular again, without a doubt, because it would probably have just chunted along a little bit more. But once that film came out, it kind of made it cool to go out and do those things. So
it was just a thing we were doing. It was sort of, when you're doing something and what it is beyond the act you're involved in is of no relevance, because all you're doing is that thing, whether that's a climb or a film or a book. For me, you're just involved in that creative process. But no, I suppose Hard Grit did catch the imagination in it's a timing thing, isn't it? As much as, there's been various climbing films like Stone Monkey or Hard Grit or what other ones? There was a really good Chris Sharma one called Rampage, and these ones were just at the right time. They caught something on just in its way up. And there was already some sort of upswelling, which just became part of the upswelling. These films became part of the reason why things become more popular, maybe.
Yeah, well, I say I kind of haven't really thought about it very much. And then when we did this recent screening at the Abbeydale Picture House, with a really big crowd of 300 people, and everyone was enwrapped, and I hadn't seen it for years. And yeah, I was just like, wow, this is actually really, really exciting. We watched the bit where Leo's on End of the Affair, and it was proper edge of the seat. It felt really, really exciting to watch, and even though you knew he was going to do it, there's still the tension there. Nobody looks like they're got it nailed, I don't think. So I'm still really pleased with it, and the fact that I didn't start out knowing knowing nothing, and ended up with something that sort of feels like it, has the test of time and captures a moment I think that's what's cool about it. But unfortunately, usually when you finish films, you hate them. And it was actually when I went to Australia, we got invited to a film festival out there, and we got one ticket between two of us. So, we went half as on one ticket, and then the other one person then had a free ticket. And it was probably about 2 years since we'd finished it, and we saw it with an audience, and I burst into tears at the end of it, because it was always something that all I could see were the faults, and the distance that I'd had from 2 years distance made me realise, wow, this is like really good. Yeah, just burst into tears then. So that was when I kind of knew it was all right. But I mean, because the screening in Sheffield, we had the premiere, which had about 100, local people. They were all the people that were involved in the film, like, Ben Moon was there, and Jerry and blah, blah, blah. Everybody who starred in the film was there. And it was like a really good party atmosphere, and people spontaneously clapping throughout the whole film. It wasn't just at the end. It was just like after the sequences, like the stuff, the history section, both all three of the musical sections in the history section, people just applauded at the end. Like, so much of the film was being lost. But I was just sat there, and Mark as well, just thinking, oh God, we could have edited that better. Why did we wobble? What was the camera wobble there, and all this sort of stuff, all these problems that we could see but nobody else could. So even though it was like a revelation, and I think probably I've only had 3 or 4 screenings in my lifetime that will ever, that have matched up to it. You're just thinking, it could be better. There's Bentley. Come in, Neil. He's promised me last question. Come on in. It's all right. I'm being interviewed about Hard Grit. Yeah. All right.
Thanks to Seb, Niall and Rich for their time on putting this together. I'd love to be able to say that you could stream Hard Grit, but you can't. You might be able to get hold of a DVD or VHS copy. You'd also have to track down a VHS player, I guess. But there'll be a lot of them kicking around. Thanks also to Mike Check, who cut some of the sections of the film for me that were used. Factor 2 now has a newsletter called Off Belay. You can find it at factor2.co.uk. You've been listening to Factor 2 from UK Climbing. I'm Will Treasure. Thanks for listening.
Hey,
I can't get you out of my head.
it's all in the mind.
Yeah.